is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. The only vans he's getting in these days are of the mini variety, Stu Horvath.
Hey, man, I have a wagon.
You do have a wagon. I will tell you, though, I just got back from my honeymoon, and we rented a minivan. Let me tell you something about Mom's Taxi. Fantastic. They ain't like they used to be, guys. Doors on both sides. Good sound systems, captain chairs for everybody. I love a good minivan these days. How you doing, Stu?
I'm hanging in there, sipping my tea, ready to gab.
Sitting your tea, ready to gab. Well, real quick, top of the hour, before we start this episode, we got a great guest tonight. I'm going to introduce just momentarily. I got to say, this is the very home stretch for Mystic Punks. Mystic Punks RPG from Exalted Funeral is in the very, very final days of their Kickstarter. And it's one of these games that I've definitely played. And I'm not just saying this because I'm biased, because I actually wrote a fiction adventure for this thing. However, it's one of the most fun RPGs I've ever had the pleasure of playing. If you grew up in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, if you're part of any kind of like subculture, counterculture, or just like to vibe and hang with your friends, Mystic Punks RPG is absolutely for you. I'm bad at numbers, I'm bad at days, but I know that this episode airs on Monday. They're in the home stretch of this awesome Kickstarter. Mystic Punks from Exalted Funeral. Check it out now. I'm probably posting about it on my Instagram, to be quite frank and honest, so just go find me at John McGuire RPG. Speaking of other great Johns, tonight we have John Patrick Cooper on the show to talk about. You like that, right?
Oh, that was pretty good.
When Alex edits it together, it's going to land so perfectly. But we got John Patrick Cooper on the show to talk about a few things they worked on, particularly Get in the Van, and something we've actually covered on the show before in the past. We're going to talk a little bit about Dead Mall, urban exploration gone horribly, horribly wrong. A Tunnel Goons hack by John Patrick Cooper. John, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Stoked we're finally getting to sit down and have a chat together.
So am I. I found the Dead Mall podcast just as a fluke. I didn't realize you guys had covered it, and it totally made my month that month.
Oh,
I was like floating on cloud nine.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, it's funny because I never think about the impact of our show like that, because generally, like, we just always talk to the creators about their stuff. So but there are a lot of creators out there, I guess, that, like, you know, we've never talked to before because we've been doing the show for like, I don't know, 6-7 years. And yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you had a good day because of that. That makes me feel good in my heart and in my soul. So we've been chatting over the Discord recently, and you definitely wanted to turn me on to this thing you wrote called Get in the Van, which is, you know, very topical with the joke I told at the start of the show. It's a Troika adventure. It's compatible with Troika, and it is something that, like, really checks off a lot of boxes for me coming up in the punk rock scene, loving RPGs as much as I did. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Get in the Van?
Well, Get in the Van is a game I created for a Troika Jam a couple of years ago. Basically, the idea is that you start out as you're a band going on their first tour. And then, so what happens is you can be a hardcore band, a thrash metal band, or a glam band. And this all takes place in 1980X. So it kind of covers all those genres at the time. And basically you go to a club and you basically have combat rock with the audience. And if you beat them, you had a great set. And if you don't, you had a terrible set. And then in between shows, like if you're going to the next show, I have a D66 table of, you know, unfortunate occurrences that happen on the road. You know, instruments get stolen, pulled over by cops. You know, it's meant to be played campaigny, I guess, because you want to have in between the shows to tell the story of the band. And I've had a lot of fun running it in the past. You know, pretty much everybody has told me they've had a really great time at the end of it, because it's just, you know, 100% supposed to have fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a love letter to being in a punk band, going on tour, and a very nice wink and a nod to, like, things like the silly things that you do when you're in a band and the silly way that you act when you're in a band. Like everything's performative. As a dude who's been doing it for as long as I have, like there's certain things that just make me genuinely uncomfortable. Right down here in the guitar section, you have the O face.
Yeah.
Which for those who are listening who may not understand what the O face is when it comes to a guitar player, it's that point where like the guitar player is like ripping through a guitar solo and they make these like weird contorted faces where you're like, are they having a stroke? Are they orgasming? Like you can't really tell which way. It might be like a little column A, a little column B, but it is just like so unnatural and so uncomfortable to watch. So yeah, like when you sent this over to me and I was like flipping through it, I was like, that was like one of the first things like I saw and it jumped off the page at me, and I'm like, I'm just very uncomfortable, just baseline because of this. So like, what led you? And listen, Google it, just Google it. Like, look at any kind of guitar player that you know that actually shreds. They have like really terrible, like it's a picture that is just the most unflattering stuff there. And I wish I could like audibly make the sound that I think that their face is making at that moment, but you can't unsee it, bro. So like of all things that would bring you to Troika hack, people love doing hacks of Troika, and I think that's cool as hell. But of all things to come to, like talk to the audience a little bit about your experience of like bringing music to Troika like this.
Basically, it's a bit of a nod to my own upbringing. I grew up in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area in the early 80s, and I fell into the hardcore scene out there. So I was very lucky because I got to see a lot of amazing bands like in their prime, not the 56-year-old version of the band,
Yeah.
and so it really is kind of like, I don't know if a love letter is the right word for it, but close enough to those days. I'm not particularly nostalgic about them. I don't go like, I'm not like the football captain who's reminiscing about when he was 16, but it was a lot of fun. And I saw a lot of fucking great bands. And I'm really, really lucky to have been around at that time. So I just wanted to kind of give a nod to it. And I felt like that was, I mean, it's funny because music, how do you bring music into an RPG? Because obviously the people playing the RPG don't necessarily have instruments and ready to rock out with you. So I thought this was the next best thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I have no music experience. I like music. I love listening to music and seeing bands and stuff, but I don't play music and I don't want to play music and I can't imagine touring. It just seems
Uncomfortable.
yeah, like the worst kind of travel ever. But weirdly enough, this afternoon I got a copy of an old favorite record of mine, the first Mephistopheles
Oh
record.
yeah.
Nice. I saw that on Instagram.
And I was just like, man, there's like 7,000 guys in this band. I remember seeing them a couple times back in the 90s but like I was just like looking at the back, they have all these tour photos and stuff, and it's just like, how did they do this? And then I was on the Wikipedia for them, and apparently like they did a national tour really early, and they wound up doing like a 3-night stand in Hawaii. And I'm just like, how did that happen? What was that like? How like what was that experience for like, the saxophonist? I just don't have any touchstones for it. And now we're talking about a Troika game about touring and, winding up in improbable situations. And it's great.
Well, touring in a lot of ways is like going on a dungeon crawl. And I know, we talk about music a lot on the show, but like it really is like when you think about you and your adventuring party, which is the dudes in your band, heading out to strange and unknown territories, getting dropped in the middle of nowhere, having to kind of forage and find your way around these weird and wonderful new places, and you're interacting with a lot of like really crazy NPCs and trying to not get into fights. Like, yeah, I mean, for all intents and purposes, like the food's just as bad and the pay is shitty too. It's like being a very low level adventurer for sure.
Like, let's be real though. I've seen some tour vans, and the van is the dungeon.
You would think, yeah, you would think, and then you've never played certain parts of Michigan on a Tuesday night. So, and no offense to Michigan, I love Michigan, but there's definitely some clubs I've been to that were like, oh no, where am I? What trouble did I get into now? But yeah, it's got its moments. Yeah, so like, you bring this out of experience. You bring this out from a place of like, not from that like I once threw four touchdowns in one game, sense of nostalgia. The other side of this is, one of the other projects that you wowed us with because we did an entire episode about is Dead Mall, right?
Yes.
So like, it's a very different type of game than what Get in the Van is with this Troika hack. So like, talk to us a little bit about like that experience, like kind of, the shifting between really genres, while still being within like the foot on the base of the RPG.
Well, with Dead Mall, I just wanted to figure out, like, I discovered Tunnel Goons, which is an amazing system. It's one of my favorite RPG systems because it's so simple. And I thought, what would be an interest? I thought to myself, what would be an interesting topic for, doing a Tunnel Goons hack? And the whole idea of a Dead Mall, basically I was like, oh, you can play Dawn of the Dead. Like that was the basic premise, was that, okay, you can go to a mall and fight zombies. And then I built on that, and, coming from from that era in the 80s, the Satanic Panic definitely has a place in my memory. So I created an adventure for Dead Mall that had satanic cultists in it, and I don't know. I just think that it didn't seem like a huge leap from one thing to the other when I was making it. I was just like, wow, this is a dumb idea. I'm going to run with it.
They do feel sort of twin to me. Like, I mean, there's something about the 80s sense of a mall as like the cultural meeting ground for, the community, right? Like you have the metalheads and everybody goes to the mall to meet and shop. And I saw bands at the mall. Didn't Electric Frankenstein play like a Macy's or something? Like
They
there's
played
like,
a Bloomingdale's pre-pandemic.
Wow.
geez, that's not even that long ago. Jesus.
Oh yeah.
But then, like, I think it's also interesting because, like, there is a little bit of nostalgia in Get in the Van, but there's Dead Mall sort of marries the idea of the mall, the nostalgic idea of the mall, with sort of the contemporary reality of like the mall, the idea of the dying off and
Mm-hmm.
becoming these dungeon spaces. I think that's super interesting. Was that just a natural thing that came out of the development of sort of being like starting from Dawn of the Dead and pushing in new directions, or do you hate capitalism? What's your deal?
No, I don't hate capitalism. It is what it is. But I'm not strident or anything like that. I found that Dead Mall channel. A friend of mine recommended that Dead Mall channel to me around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I got kind of, sucked into that world of checking out all the abandoned malls and stuff like that. And so it kind of was just like good timing.
Now, did you like actually go in person to check out some of these malls? I know there's a very thriving culture of people who break. I mean, and we're not advising you, dear listener, to break into places that would have you brought up on charges of trespassing or put you in any kind of danger. But there are people out there I've heard and seen on the TikTok that do go into these old malls and kind of like walk around and like explore. I mean, is this, I guess, you know what? Never mind. I don't want you to end up copping to something that's going to get you in trouble. So just say that you watched it on the TikTok, allegedly.
I've never been one for urban exploration. So you don't have to worry about, setting me up for going for a bid that I would sorely deserve.
That stuff is
Um,
terrifying, man.
It is terrifying.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up, I grew up in the Bay Area of San Francisco, and in the 80s, like the mall was the center focus of everything, like all the planets revolved around the mall. And so I have like a connection, like my place where I got, the first edition AD&D was at the mall, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like back in
same.
the day. So there's like a connection with malls in general. I don't feel any way about them now. It's not like I'm all warm-hearted about them, but there's definitely that all those memories that I have growing up as a kid hanging out there.
Yeah, I definitely miss the idea of the mall, like not not as like temple of capitalism, but like as you said, like it was a way to get stuff that was cool. I got my first D&D stuff at a mall. I also thought they just had like a vibe that was kind of cool, like the marble floors, like the fountains. It evokes a little bit of that. I think about True Stories, the Talking Heads movie, a lot in respect to like my weird nostalgia and hatred of malls. It's like simultaneous because
Mhm.
like malls are terrible. They were awful places. Like they got so hot and there was always so many people and like the food sucked. But like you got cool stuff there and like I don't know. It like sometimes they had movie theaters and that the experience of seeing those movies that were important to you as a kid sort of gets entwined in the mall experience. It's just a really strange thing. And now they're just gone. They're just totally they're dead and they're becoming dungeons, like literally like something that we've never like a kind of space that we've never had before in the real world is now is the mall or what's left of it, the corpse of the mall. Are you going to do more with Dead Mall? Are you going to do cut some more adventures?
I'm not sure to be honest. I made I made Satanic Panic at Crowley Place Mall, which is the adventure for it. I made that as kind of like a introductory adventure for it. I don't know if I'm going to do more stuff with Dead Mall, probably, but I've got other things in the works at the moment, so I'm just kind of focused on those at this time.
It does feel sort of like a closed system. Like I got the rules and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And then I got Satanic Panic and I was just like, oh my God, this is so good. And then I was like, I wouldn't write one for because like Satanic Panic's just like such the perfect adventure for it. And like it's a complete package for me. I would love more, but I don't know what you would do to make more. Are you going to do more Get in the Van stuff? Are you going to put together
Yes,
like formal
actually.
adventures?
I have written my first adventure for Get in the Van. It's called Wasted Youth, and it's basically a mini point crawl where you go from club to club. There's a storyline in it that you start out like you're leaving town, your hometown. You play at your pizza parlor, and then from then on you go to gradually bigger and bigger venues. So by the end, you're playing in front of a stadium, which actually didn't happen back then, but I'm just,
You gotta have
that's
an arc.
okay.
Yeah.
We'll just pretend that it did.
I gotta say that when I looked through this for the first time, I was like flipping through and I'm just like, oh, this is good. Like I like the vibe. I get like the I like the genres of music that are on display. Like you have like a good handle on them and what the distilling those scenes into Troika. Like that's the half the fun of the doing a Troika hack, right?
Yes, definitely.
But then I got to the thrash bassist who is obviously modeled on Cliff and
Yes.
and his advanced skill is it should have been Lars.
Right. Oh
I,
my God. You saw that? Yeah. Holy
and I
shit.
died because it should have been Lars.
Yeah.
It's so good. I love that. That's sort of the beauty of Troika is translating the world into these like joke skills that tell you so much about the world.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. You're correct. The other side of the coin, a dead mall. It's definitely, love letter. I think is something that does get thrown around a lot, but it also happens to be the most accurate descriptor for the kind of games that these both are.
Hmm.
But you know what? It does it in a way where you're not, or as I'm reading it, you're not painting either world with like rose-colored glasses. You're standing on the edge of both of them with a like a real sense of appreciation.
Well, love
And
is a partnership, man. It's
yeah,
not it's a two-way street. It's not the worship of nostalgia.
yeah, and that's something
Yeah.
that's a hard line to walk, because it's very easy to kind of fall into the other way where you're Stranger Things, which not shitting on Stranger Things, I love it, but they paint with a pretty heavy brush in that one, dude. All right, so John, I mean, I feel like we got a pretty good feel for both Get in the Van and Dead Mall. You have anything else cool that you're working on right now?
Yeah, actually, I am working on my first Into the Odd hack. It's called Inoculated City, and
Sweet.
the whole gist of it is post-apocalyptic gang warfare. So it's like kind of a
Nice.
combination of the Warriors and Mad Max and Judge Dredd.
Did we just become
Perfect.
best friends? Do you want to go do karate in the garage? Yeah, I mean, shit. I'll just PayPal you now. Fuck it. That's great.
It just fits in so perfectly with the other two. It's great.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I guess I have a lane I stay in, which is fine.
And it's your third hack. Is that sort of your artist's brush?
Well, to be honest, there are so many systems out there that, like, every game was coming out with a new system to learn, and I was like, I don't want to learn any new systems. I want to, I know Tunnel Goons, I know Into the Odd, I know Troika. So I'm building on those because I don't feel the need to reinvent the wheel.
I do think that we've hit that point in like the timeline where it's just like there's enough, we have enough systems. If somebody wants to make another one, far be it for me to say no. But
Right.
I do like I like the way that a system like Troika or Into the Odd, they're so flexible. You could push anything into them and it kind of works and clicks in
Hmm.
fun and interesting ways. And I'm glad to see you expanding your repertoire.
Yeah, man, it's pretty cool that like there is a system for every adventure, and I think that previous to now, and I would say even in like the last like 5 to 7 years, there was always that thing where it's like you have a story you want to tell, but the only real options you had that were like what people knew and understood were like D&D or Cthulhu, or something in that vein. But now like Trigger, Tunnel Goons, Into the Odd, Power of the Apocalypse, like 90 different other systems that are just like you have something that'll work perfectly already written. You just put in your information and go. I think that's dope as hell.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to kind of go in and be like, okay, now I'm calling strengths brawn, and you've already got a bunch of systems that do disadvantage and advantage and stuff. And so it's like, to me, I'm just kind of like, run with it, run with what's already been built.
Yep, play the chords everyone already knows.
Right.
Well, very cool. So I think it's a good place to go home on the episode. John, where can people find you on the internet? Where can they buy your games?
Well, I'm not really on the internet.
Good for you. Oh God, you are so
Bless you,
lucky.
sir.
Oh,
Yes, I don't really like, I live in Discord.
must be
So if I'm
nice.
on a server with you, that's how you can get in touch with me. Let's see. You can Get in the Van and Dead Mall both from Exalted Funeral. They have like print copies. You can get PDF only,
Perfect.
and whatever your preference is. I particularly like the print edition of Dead Mall because having a game pamphlet is rad.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, very cool, guys. Just go to Exalted Funeral. You're gonna shop there anyway, and they've got
It's
all the
like a
stuff you want to
mall
buy. It is like a mall.
for role-playing games.
Yeah. And listen, and I've been to the warehouse, so I know how the sausage gets made, as it were. So this is another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG. You can check out Dead Mall and Satanic Panic at the Crowley Place Mall in my feed. I posted them last year before that, sometime. Time meaningless.
I
Doesn't
know,
matter anymore.
and
But
and
it's
look
there.
at that.
Just
You didn't,
search. You could probably just like search hashtag Dead Mall, and my post will be right there.
you didn't have to wait till like 2026 to get posted about. That's awesome.
Yeah, we already took care of it.
You can find me on the internet at John McGuire RPG. I'm in most places on the internet, but mostly I'm on Instagram. You can see some of the pictures I took in front of In-N-Out Burger on my honeymoon, which was awesome. In-N-Out Burger, oh, so good. It's one of those things you only get to have every so often when you're from the East Coast, and when you do, you savor it. If you're in the tri-state area, this episode is dropping on the 15th of April, 2024. On the 20th of April 2024, same week that this episode drops. If you are in the tri-state area and you are a hop, skip, and a jump from Kearney, New Jersey, why not swing down to the Geek Flea? Stu has been putting on a Geek Flea market twice a year for how many years?
This is our 23rd Geek Flea. So that makes this 12 years of Geek Fleas plus 2 off years. So 14 years I've been doing this. My God.
Yeah, it is awesome. And it's a short event too. It's one day only. It's Saturday, April 20th, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., right?
Yes, sir.
And it's great. People are there selling their wares. The people who are selling games, people selling toys, people trying to unload their pop figures, people selling vintage video games, people selling tchotchkes and jewelry and homemade dice. And the church ladies sell like cookies. And they're really, really good. Our buddy Sean will be there selling hot sauce. It's one of those cool things that like you'll hear us talk about after the fact and go, oh man, I wish Hambo told us in advance. Well, finally, I remembered to tell you in advance. This episode drops on Monday. On the Saturday following, April 20th, Kearney, New Jersey, Geekfully. You can check the social media feeds. Will be posted about it. But it's definitely worth checking out. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really help other listeners to find us. And if you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerpg. For as little as $1 a month, you get a early release episode, usually about Friday. We drop them once we get them back from Alex. So you get it earlier than anybody else. We have tiers where you can play an RPG with me once a month. You got tiers where you can play in a ongoing West Marches campaign with Stu. We got a behind the scenes look at whatever Stu's working on. We got a behind the scenes look at whatever I'm working on. Patreon.com/vintagerpg. And also a killer Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of. Patreon.com/vintagerpg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.